Okay, cool. Hey everyone. Today I'm going to introduce the Haunt of High Tower. So it's this card. Kind of ish. Okay, so anyways, I'm gonna read it because I normally don't read cards. So the Haunt of High Tower is a 6 mana flying lifelink creature, legendary creature. Oh, by the way, this is for commander. And then whenever he attacks, the defending player has to discard a card. And whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, he gets a +1/+1 counter. So you can get pretty fast in EDH because there's a lot of like graveyard recursion decks, a lot of like wheels, and also just the fact that there's a lot of different interesting interactions that I'll go over throughout my deck tech right now. So the theme of course would be to is Voltron, but unlike traditional Voltron, because it grows by itself through milling out your opponent and stuff like that. So we have a lot of cards here that you normally won't see as much in my other Voltron decks, which is more like suiting it up. Like I do run equipments here, but they're more like on theme of trying to discard the opponent's hand or to sort of deplete their resources and put them into the graveyard. All right, let's go into these cards right now. Okay, so I sort of laid out all my cards like this. I'm gonna put this in tapped out eventually, but if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments or anything to sort of like backseat me in terms of telling me how to actually build the deck better. So we start off with the basic lands. We're playing 30 swamps, so they're just a very simple mana base, along with some utility lands as usual. So we have 6 of them. So the first 2 I'm playing is, of course, the Cabal Coffers, along with the Cabal Stronghold. So of course, like Cabal Coffers is much better, but sometimes you draw into either of them and it still kind of works. It gives you a bit of like mana. So then after that, Relinquary Tower. So in this deck, you'll end up drawing a lot of cards at some point, and being able to keep all of those cards instead of discarding down to 7 is a really good thing. So you'll see later on why. Like there's a lot of card draws, so this card is very essential to the deck. And Gaia Reach Sanctum. So this is similar to I think Mikokoro or something. Was it Mikokoro? The one whereby you tap 2 and everyone draws a card. But instead, for us, we want the Gaia Reach because we want everyone to draw and then we want them to discard a card. So let's say if you have 2 opponents, 2 cards will go into the graveyard. You have 3 opponents, 3 cards will go into opponent's graveyard. Each time you activate this, and it'll grow the haunt by 2 or by 3 or something like that. So it's very incidental, and it also helps you dig. And finally, the other 2 cards we have is a Strip Mine and a Wasteland. So these are here really just as answers to those really troublesome, annoying lands that you want to deal with. But at the same time, it also, once again, it grows the haunt, like it gets things into the graveyard. And sometimes it really matters when you're missing that one single point of damage to kill someone. Or something like that. It's pretty doable. So for instances, I'll go through the 2 protection spells that we have. So black doesn't offer too much, right? So I'm playing without weakness. So your creature is gonna gain indestructible, right, until the end of the turn. And I don't really like this in the sense that it doesn't really get past things like Path or Swords, things that exile a creature. It doesn't really save you. But the nice thing though is that it does cycle, and in black it's really hard to find ways to sort of protect your stuff. If you guys know anything better, do let me know. But this one is totally a hidden gem. It's very interesting. It's a black redirect, so Imp's Mischief. So let's say if someone targets anything on your board, right? You can play the Imp's Mischief for 1 black and 1 colorless, and you can change that target spell of a single target to something else. But the only downside is that you lose life. But since our commander has lifelink, we don't care, and it's still a very good redirect. I think it's printed in it's in planar chaos. So it's in planar chaos. So all those funny stuff happens during this set. So next, this pile. So the next one are black's what black does best, the kill spells. So we're running a Doom Blade, go for the throat, cast down. Ultimate Price, which will be changed for a Liliana's Triumph. So we're getting the new set for War of the Spark in about I think 2 weeks. So this will be replaced by Liliana's Triumph. which is like kind of like an edict, but on all your opponents at once. And it's the same mana cost, so why not? Like ultimate price, it's a bit more difficult because you have to do like monocolor creature, but I mean it's a placeholder for now. So after that, there's Hero's Demise. This will kill any commander. So sometimes people say like, well, you know, it's kind of narrow because it only kills legendary creature. Well, guess what? All commanders are legendary creatures. It will destroy a lot of stuff. Malicious Affliction. So this has kind of like Morbid. So if a creature died this turn, you get to copy it twice. So it's exactly a Doomblade, but it's like 2 black for 2 Doomblades if something else died during your turn. Hero's Downfall. Really good, really important because nowadays people are starting to run more Planeswalkers, especially in the new set. We can see for the next like maybe at least half a year to a year, we're gonna see a lot of Planeswalkers, whether they're good or not. And having a way to destroy a creature or Planeswalker for 3 is really good at instant speed. So Vana's Hunger. So this is kind of like the new card, Liliana's Triumph, except it has Ascend. So if you have 10 or more permanents, you get a City's Blessings, and instead each opponent will sacrifice half the number of creatures he or she controls. So a lot of these cards that I'm trying to run in the deck tries to hit all opponents as opposed to one opponent, and you'll soon see why that is good, right? So then for our sweepers, we're running Cry of the Carnelian. All creatures get -2/-2, and they get exiled. It doesn't hurt our haunt because it's at 3, even at the start. Flame Tendrils does the same thing. Drawn in Sorrow doesn't exile, but it's it lets us scry instead. Oh yeah, by the way, all of them are like -2/-2. So I specifically chose these so that it wouldn't hurt the haunt. But then it gets away all the like mana dorks and tokens, stuff like that usually. We're running a Toxic Deluge as well. We're not running Damnation because we don't want to kill our own haunt. So Toxic Deluge is able to kill everything else except for a haunt. Usually the haunt would be the largest thing on the board. Then there's Mutilate. Usually it doesn't kill the haunt either, but it kills everything else. And finally, Yahenni's Expertise. Like I really love this card after I started playing it because it is always a free spell, right? You're gonna play this for 4 and you play something else at 3 or less. This one -3 to all creatures, and then you play an extra card.
You can place more on the left side. Yeah.
Okay, so on this side, this is the more like on theme stuff, which is fun. So as the Haunt of High Tower, you're gonna unnerve your opponents. So for 4 mana, each opponent is gonna discard 2 cards. Tassiger's Cruelty does a similar thing, except it also has Delve. You don't really care too much about what's in your graveyard because I did not put graveyard recursion for this deck. So I mean that's just the theme I went with, right? Like I didn't want to play like Reanimation or like put things into my own graveyard. So this is often very relevant. You can delve for it. Then we'll go with this one first. So Artisanal Flow is each opponent discards 2 cards, which is the same thing. But if you control Vampire and hurrah, our commander is the Vampire, each opponent will lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. So the life gain, life loss is very incidental. It's really just like another like basically 3 spells. All these 3 spells make everyone discard 2 cards. I mean all your opponents. And the final card we're running at 6 CMC. Okay, at a 6 CMC we're running Capital Punishment. So this is from Conspiracy, I believe, and it has Council's Dilemma. So starting with you, each player chooses Death or Taxes. So in a game player, let's say in a game with 3 players, you'll get 3 votes, and then 4 players you get 4 votes, right? So each vote it will trigger something. So for Death vote, each opponent will sacrifice a creature, and each Taxes vote they will discard a card. So once again, this is a great way of clearing up the board as well as getting things in the graveyard to grow the haunt. Moving on. Okay, so now for the super exciting stuff. This is the mass discard spells that I'm running. So there's Dark Deal, so each opponent discards their hand and then draws that many -1. Usually this would grow the haunt to an absurd amount, like at least plus 14 to even plus 20 sometimes. The Awaken the Erzwile, which is also the same thing, discard your hand, but instead you create that many 2/2 black zombie tokens. And trust me, most most of the time, or rather in my games, I've never died from giving my opponents zombies, and you also can wipe them out if it becomes an issue. Most of the time you cast this, you swing once, you kill someone. And then you lifelink all the damage that you've dealt, so you don't really care too much about giving people zombies. Card draw. Man, before I played Black, I didn't realize that they really have the best like draws in the game. So we're playing like Sign in Blood, we're playing Knight's Whisper, we're playing Ambition's Cost, and Ancient Craving. So effectively, they're like a 2 mana draw 2 and 4 mana draw 3s, and you lose life for them. But it's fine because once again, our commander lifelinks, so we can afford to do that. We're running like just one tutor, the Diabolic Tutor. I might put more tutors in the future, but I don't know what to slot out yet. And I also didn't want to play too like linear. You know, I want each game to be a bit more exciting, more diverse. But we are running a Torment of Hailfire as well as an alternate win condition, and or also growing our haunt because things discarded, things sacrificed would go into the graveyard. This works really well because we have the Cabal Coffers, and also we have other mana accelerations, which we'll go through soon as well. And finally, Temporal Extortion. This card is really good, but also really bad because you almost always want people to... Yeah, I think I'm going to change this card for something else, actually, because you always want to play this and get an extra turn. Unless you have Wind Reflection, then, you know, you just kill someone with this card. But without Wind Reflection, there will be players that say, well, you know what, you paid 4 mana, all right, you end it, and then, like, let's say you're tapped out, you have no more mana, you end your turn, and that's it, you know. So you lose half their life, but you don't get an extra turn. So it isn't as good as I hoped it would be, so maybe I might change this for something else. But yes, this card lets you take another extra turn, or an opponent, unless an opponent pays half their life for 4 mana. Some additional utility enchantments. So Friction Arena, by now most of you should know what this does. It just lets you draw an extra card and upkeep, you lose life. Pestilence, incredibly good. I haven't gotten this in any game. I played like 6 to 8 games with the Haunt now, but I haven't drawn into this yet. So once again, the Haunt will always be the largest thing. So you can deal damage to each creature and each player for each black mana that you pay. So once again, you don't care about taking damage because your commander will lifelink all of it back anyways, but it clears up the board. As additional added protection, no mercy. So when a creature deals damage to us, we will destroy it immediately. It goes through Hexproof, it goes through Shroud, it's just a triggered effect. And then finally we have Greed. I recently got an Erebos, and I was considering putting in that as well, or replacing it. But since we're doing commander damage, we don't care about people gaining life, so we're running Greed instead. So the main trade-off is that Greed is 1 mana to activate, meanwhile Erebos I believe is 2 mana, and also Erebos is, you know, indestructible. But for our purposes, paying 2 life and 1 black to draw a card is much better, so that's why I'm running this one. Let's go like this. So arguably one of the best cards in the deck that synergizes everything else would be the Waste Not, because whenever an opponent discards a card, something happens, right? If they discard a creature card, we get a black zombie token. When our opponent discards a land card, we get 2 black. Whenever an opponent discards a non-creature, non-land card, we draw a card. So because we have so many different ways to make our opponent discard a card, from our commander swinging, and also like the earlier cards I showed you that make your opponent discard a few cards or discard their hand, this becomes really insanely good and usually can finish games. So then we have Words of Waste. This card is very funny. By the time you get this out and your opponents have like, I don't know, let's say between 4 to 6 cards, it's very fast for you to get rid of their entire hand. Because remember, we have many ways to draw cards, right? So Words of Waste work as such. You pay 1 generic mana, so 1 colorless, and the next time you would draw a card this turn, your opponent instead discards a card from his or her hand. So what you could do is you could make yourself draw, and then you pay 1 for each card you draw to instead discard each opponent. So I've always been very happy when I play that card. And then yes, we're running one of the combos in our deck. It is a combo, right? So we have Blood Chief, Ascension, and Mindcrank. I didn't want to go for like the combo oriented decks. I'm not really into that anymore. But I felt that these two are specifically good because they're they're good like by themselves. Together they win, but by themselves they work too. So Blood Chief Ascension usually will keep you alive, you know, like gain you a lot of incidental life, get people down, a lot of life, yada yada yada. And Mind Crank by itself grows the haunt. Remember, whenever your opponent mills, the haunt grows bigger. So individually they're good, together they win the game, so that's why they're in the deck. Mana Rock, I'm gonna go through this a bit faster, but we have Soul Ring, we have Mana Vault, we have Mind Stone, Grim Monolith, Thought Vessel, Collision Relic, Worn Power Stone, Extraplanar Lens, Thron Dynamo, Hedron Archive, Gauntlet of Power, and Cage Sun. So we have 12 mana rocks in here, kind of, or like rather mana sources addition to lands, because our commander costs 6. So there have been games whereby I had to recast them for 10, recast them for 12. It's very common. So we really want to get as much mana as possible, right? And all these, I believe, are like colorless, or at least for the rocks, they're a colorless source, right? So I ran to do that instead because we already have 30 swamps. So getting black doesn't really matter. We really rather have a mana rock that taps for 2 or more. So the equipments we're running for this deck are as follows. So recently someone told me about this and I was like, oh, I'm so impressed because I didn't know it existed and it worked the way it should. But Ring of Xanthrid, for 2 to play and I guess 1 to equip, you get an additional ability for the creature. You pay 2 and you can regenerate it. So basically you just remove all damage from it, you tap it, and that's it. So it's a great way to sort of keep it alive. There are other equipments in here that also protect. I guess you'll see it later on. But the nice thing is that if it is a black creature, it gets bigger. It gets a +1/+1 counter every upkeep that you have. So that's nice. We have a Chariot of Victory. It's a 3 mana to cast and 1 mana to equip. So this one, it gives our haunts a first strike, trample, and haste. So having haste is really important. Trample is really important if you're like trying to go through, if they end up having flyers and you have to go through them. First strike is also relevant for one of the other cards we'll go through later. Haunted Cloak, Vigilance, once again, haste and trample. So it's the same as like Chariot of Victory, except like a bit of other different words. So there's haste, there's trample, but then instead of first strike, we get vigilance. So vigilance is really nice because it protects you from the backswing, right? Like lifelink already works, but let's say if you become the arch enemy and everyone's attacking you, right? Having the vigilance would at least allow you to deter them from like ganging up on you. So Darksteel Plate, nothing much to say here. I mean, especially because our commander costs so much to bring out, we really need like every form of protection that we can get. So Darksteel Plate, really good. It survives everything, and our commander survives as well. Trepidation Blade, very fun, but also depends on your luck. Sometimes you'll just mill 1 card and then you'll be kind of sad. Oh yeah, so basically how this works is that every time you attack, each time you attack, the defending opponent will mill themselves until they hit a land. And then let's say if they mill, the first one is a land, then they'll mill until they get a land, basically. And then you count the number of mills that they get. So first it grows the haunt, and after that you get +1/+0 until the end of the turn for each one milled that way. So sometimes if you mill 1, you're sad, he gets a +1/+1 counter, he gets +1/+0 until end of the turn. But the thing is that it gets better every additional card that's milled, right? So let's say if you mill someone for, I don't know, like let's say 8. Okay, your haunt is at is 3/3, but you have a trap blade and you mill him for 8. You pretty much one-shot him because you grow it to, is it? My math doesn't work very well, but anyways, the point is that it grows the haunt permanently and also grows it temporarily if you use a trap blade, and it's along the theme of like milling. Inquisitor Scales just doubles the damage, and early on you see the first strike, right? So sometimes there will be flying creatures and you don't want them to deal double damage to the haunt. So that kind of like protects it, and because of the trample, it also pretty good. But anyways, this is just to double the damage, kill faster. So you don't need to have like
you don't need it to be a 21/21 to one-shot someone. You know, it could be lower and just double the damage. Swiftfoot Boots. It's in here because you just want to give it like hexproof, protect it, and then also like incidental haste is good. Fire Shrieker is the same idea with the what's it called? The Inquisitor's Spell. You just want to double your damage, deal as much damage as possible, lifelink as much as possible, and then these are all the equipments. So we're almost done here. Bear with me. So because we're mono black, we have no way to deal with artifacts, or no really. I mean, I looked at all the ways that black could deal with artifacts, and none of them really appeal to me realistically. So I'm running an Oblivion Stone, Inniveral's Disc, and Perilous Vault. So these, I believe these three are the only ones, the only artifacts that pretty much hit almost everything. So if you have a slightly higher budget, I would say maybe replace them or even add in like Yugen Spirit Dragon and also Karn. I feel like those are probably the best, but because I don't have those cards, I'm running these three instead to sort of like deal with it's kind of like a panic button, right? Like you don't use it just because you can, you use it because, you know, it's just you're in a situation whereby you just have to have answers for specific artifacts or enchantments that prevent you from winning or whatnot. And final few ones. So Gref's Grimoire, it's probably the second best, or if not, ties in with the best card in the deck. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you draw a card. So guess what? When you mass discard everyone, even including yourself, you end up drawing like 20 cards or 15 cards and stuff like that. This is very exciting. And incidentally, each time you attack someone, they discard a card, you draw a card. So there's many, this card works really well with a lot of other cards we have in the deck that I've shown you so far, right? Helmet's Archive doubles your life gain. So every time you lifelink, you gain double instead. Every time you draw, in addition to your first one, you draw 2 cards instead. So a lot of like, Phyrexian Arena will draw you 2 cards, basically every upkeep. And every other card that draws you a lot of cards will draw you double a lot of cards. Finally, it's Well of Lost Dreams. So because we do have lifelink, once again, every time we hit for a lot of damage, we can pay X, which is X equal to amount of damage, or rather life we gained, and we can draw X number of cards. So that's pretty much the end. Let me know how you liked it. I know this was a bit rushed. I haven't done deck text in a while, but do let me know how you liked it.